Hey guys, welcome back to Rennch, DIY projects for your air-cooled Porsche. We are into day 3 of the classic retrofit Electrocooler air conditioning install into my 69 911. So at the end of last installment, I had the fan and condenser fully mounted with a custom bracket in the rear quarter panel. Now today, the first thing I want to do is attach some of the AC hoses to that condenser. So they've included a whole bunch of different fittings and hoses. I've never installed any AC hoses before. They've included a number 6 and a number 8 hose, one a little bit bigger than the other, as well as a bunch of bungs and straps and clamps. And I have a special set of pliers called the Electrocooler pliers that I'll show you over there. And so I'm going to take you over to the table and kind of show you what's all there, and we'll see if we can figure out how to put something together. All right, so laid out on the table, I have all the individual pieces for the air conditioning plumbing. And that includes the high side and low side charge ports, a bunch of different fittings that go on the hardware itself, a bunch of clamps, these Burga clips, which I'll show you how we're going to use in a second, 10mm hose, 8mm hose, and of course the condenser. Now, one thing I don't really know is if the condenser can be run either way. It looks like it can. Looks like this is exactly the same, but I'll find that out. If I get it backwards, I can always swap it around. I have loosely fit one of the clamps onto here using these Burga clips. And I'll show you how this thing goes together. First, I'm going to clamp this one down and just call it a day and get this one in. And this is the smaller, this is the 8mm or 5/16 of an inch. There's a helicopter, and I'm on a microphone. So first, I'm going to show you this one that I've already loosely assembled. I've put the fitting inside the hose. This is the 8mm hose, and I've installed the Burga clip as well as 2 clamps. And I'll show you how this all goes together. It's actually really cool. But one thing I will say is I wasn't sure which of all of this went into the condenser, but it looks like this is set up only one way. So there are 2 of these fittings. I'll pull this out for now. There are 2 fittings that have roughly the same input size, which corresponds to the input size of the condenser. So that goes there, then this thing just gets bolted through with this little tab. Now there's 2 of these, except one has an E on it and one has a D on it. So anyway, in the diagram, it shows you that there's a D and there's an E. The D goes with the number 8, and the E goes with the number 6. So the D is the bigger of the 2, and the E is the smaller of the 2. So this is the 8mm, this is the 10mm. So I'll take the 8mm right now, and I'll put one of these in from scratch so you can see how it works. But it's really neat. So basically, you take one of these blue clips. These are 2 different sizes. Again, 8mm and 10mm for these clips. So this is a little bit smaller than that. You push the clamps down into the clip first. So this holds the clips together, okay? Then, this has a big side and a small side. You put the hose in, you slide it through the clip and through each clamp. So now it's all the way up against the end. You take your fitting and push it through on this end, all the way to the end. So now I've got everything assembled and ready to go. And then you just take your Electrocooler pliers. These are special pliers that don't come with the kit. I ordered these on Amazon. I'll throw the link up in the description. And you just give these a squeeze. I've never done AC hoses before, so this is my first time. Like that. Once they're on, what I'm told is a bunch of people leave these things on. You don't need to. All right, so I've cut most of the clip off. I may continue to cut it around a little bit. I just don't like the look of the blue over the top, but for practical purposes, let's move on. And I will show you close up of how these things work. All right, first things first, we're gonna load the clip and just push both clamps in. Then we're gonna push the number 10 hose in until it hits the end, which is where it is there. Then we're going to push this in. I mean, technically this is usually just done to space out these clamps. You could do it freehand, I suppose. Oops, don't hit the camera. And once this thing's all the way in, you just give it a clamp down. So now we're there. I just use these suckers to give them a squeeze. All right, there you go. So these will then press in. I guess it doesn't matter which end because this isn't marked. So you just press that in and bolt it down. And then Bob's your uncle. Cool. All right, so let me bolt these things down and I will see you guys in a second. So one thing I need to pay attention to as I'm bolting these on, and this one's on, I bolted the D on, which is the 8mm, is the orientation of the hose. So I know that my fan is mounting, if this is the front of the car, my fan is mounting this way. So I angled this thing this way. I'm gonna want to get away with this one fully in that direction because I know that I'm gonna wanna tuck this behind the car and route it down like that. Again, this is the E fitting on top for me. You know, I'm saying that they're stamped. It's stamped right here on the ends of each one. So that's why I'm calling it that. So this is generally how my hoses are gonna route under the car. They're gonna sort of route like this. And then they will start going to the front of the car from here. So let's go get this thing in and see, well, I take that back. Next thing I need to figure out before I run those, well, I can get it in, it doesn't matter, is where this connects to. So this is the power. This is eventually supposed to go to a relay. I just don't know if I've got to run it all the way up to the front of the car or I can route it just into the back, into the engine loom. You know, I've got some power back there in the trunk. So I'm going to kind of test fit this, get this in, and figure out where this wiring needs to lead next. So while I was in there, I discovered a spot for the filter dryer that's actually on the inside of the fan condenser that I think is going to work really well. It's just up on the back side of what you might think of the door jamb, the front door jamb, not the back door jamb. Anyway, what I thought I would do is take this bracket that I'm not going to use, and this thing, it looks like they provided a bracket for the condenser or for the filter dryer where you mount it with these two, or mount it with this, and then looks like you use zip ties around the outside. So I think I'm going to use a similar thing. I don't need this whole piece, so I'm actually just going to steal this bottom part, drill another hole, use my riv nut tool to bolt this thing into the car, and then boom, then we've got a nice mount. That's my plan anyway. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go, but I think it's going to work. So let's give it a go. First, let's cut that thing off. I totally had a chance to use a power tool that time, but I did not do it. I decided just to use a pair of these tin snips, if I can use them. I will take this to the grinder and smooth out the edge, hammer it and dolly it a little bit, and then go and fit this thing into the car. Actually, let me screw another hole first. And after a bit of grinding, we are left with this. This theoretically tucks in right there, and then you zip tie it on each side so it's secured. So this is how it'll mount up, and the idea is to maybe put 2 riv nuts here in the body, and if I have enough space, and then I will run the hoses down from the condenser or up. I don't know which one goes where yet. And then the other one will run out and to the front of the car. All right, so this ended up working out great. This is the perfect location. Fan's gonna mount in here. And this is gonna be on this side of it. I haven't looked to make sure it fits yet, but I think it will. And this filter goes in perfectly. The filter dryer goes in right there to that corner. I've got 1 riv nut in there now, and I'm basically just gonna use this as a template to drill the second hole. First, I'm gonna double check and make sure I'm okay with my fan and condenser mounting. Well, I spoke too soon. There's not quite enough room to mount the cooler, or mount the condenser and filter. Can you get in there? Yeah. It's hitting up against this bottom bracket. The top I can do. It's just a little bit too, I'm about 2 inches shy. So let me re-engineer. I still think the filter, still think the filter, this is a great place for it. So I just have to figure out where it's gonna go. And that just cost me a riv nut, that's all. So I was at a bit of a stopping point because there were some questions I needed clarification on, especially regarding the orientation of the condenser and fan and how to mount the filter dryer. So here's what I learned. Here's the condenser and fan. We have 2 different sizes of hoses that need to connect to this. Now, it doesn't actually matter which port you connect which hose to. However, we have a D port and an E port. So if I look at my hoses, the smaller of the 2 is the E, the larger of the 2 is the D. So no matter how you mount your condenser, the D has to go on top. If you mount it this way, the bigger hose needs to go here, okay? If you mount it this way, the bigger hose needs to go here. So the D needs to go on top. So gravity needs to bring the thing down. I actually had them reversed, so I will fix that when I do the final install, which is gonna be just a minute. And then the other part is, I needed to find out where the filter dryer was gonna go. And my first attempt didn't work because it was in the way of the condenser, back in the rear wheel well. But then I thought, well, let me just mount it sideways, and I'll mount it above my the pipe, the tunnel for the rear trunk latch. Turns out you can't mount it sideways. There's a little glass bubble on the top of the filter dryer that needs to stay vertical. So it needs to be vertical. On the original factory location, if you guys are doing this install the way that the directions say, the factory location is in the front, the rear part of the front wheel well. So basically, if it's at the beginning closest to the driver, mounted vertically under your front fender. I didn't have that option, and I had nowhere else to put it. I thought about maybe putting it behind, like near my rear bumper, but that was gonna add another 5-6 feet of hose length, which I didn't wanna do. Turns out you can mount it perfectly in the smuggler's box. So if you guys wanna just keep everything nice and tight and in the smuggler's box, it will mount the filter dryer and it will mount the compressor with no problem. I bought clamps from Ace Hardware that perfectly fit both hoses. Right now they're chrome. I'm going to paint them black. So now I'm going to get the condenser mounted and the hoses plumbed up to the front of the car so I can get that rear end of the car down back on the ground, make the car level again, button up the cabin because I've got some carpet pulled out for running the wire to the condenser. You need to run 2 wires to the front of the car from the back condenser. One needs to go to the fuse panel and the other one needs to go to the relay that's mounted on the compressor. I bought some extra black wire, black wire, 14 gauge to run to the front of the trunk so I can run it all the way up to the fuse panel and to one of the relays on the compressor. So my plan right now is to paint those clamps black, get that fan condenser mounted, run the AC hoses permanently up to the smuggler's box, and then get ready to work on everything I need to work on in the trunk. All right, here are some shots of the final install. This is the condenser and fan in the back of the car. It's all plumbed and wired and zip tied and ready to go. I ran the wire just behind here, towards the top, right into the cabin. And this is the wire here, just coming out of the sidewall. Right there. That's going to run down here and under the sill plate, under there, and then up into, it's going to go on the other side of this carpet and then up into the cabin on this side. And then underneath, I've run the line down the length of the car. I routed it to the inside. So this cover is going to go over here like that. This is going to go on the inside of the cover, runs up by the master cylinder, then straight up. So it comes out kind of the big hole by the steering rack. So I'm routing this smaller hose to this side. I've solved the dilemma of where to put the filter receiver, and that is going to mount right here in the smuggler's box. There's plenty of room for that and the compressor. Yeah, we should be good to go. So right now I'm just going to finish up the wire, get that into the cabin, and I'm actually thinking about really finishing all the AC plumbing. So that's the plan. I also want to check out the blower and make sure that I have my wiring right and it turns on when I want it to. So that's next. All right, we're making some good progress. I've got the filter dryer in the corner, and there's plenty of room to run the compressor up here as well. So if I pull this out, I've got, I think, a pretty clean install. I just cut the bracket and mounted it in the side through a stud. I've got it all plumbed up. This is ready to go to, this tube is ready to go to first the charging port and then to the blower. And then this one, the bigger one, is going to go to the compressor. So right now I'm going to wrap it in terms of getting the fabrication stuff done. And I'm going to test the blower and see if when I plug it in, anything exciting happens. All right, guys, mission accomplished. So I was able to get the fan and condenser all mounted up permanently, plumb it with the air conditioning hoses, wire from the condenser up to the trunk, cover all that up on the interior, get the filter dryer installed in the smuggler's box and plumb that up with air conditioning hoses. And then what I failed at today was getting my blower to fire. I plugged it in. Again, I don't have my plug, so I was able to get the pin locations, tried to get it to go, nothing worked. So next time we're going to finish the air conditioning plumbing, going to work on the ducting to and from all the different spots, and then the bane of my existence, wiring. So until then, thank you for subscribing, and we'll see you next time.